what you don't learn right away is how markets work, how the Bitcoin markets work, and where the price is going to go because humans aren't rational. And so
Mhm.
when I got into Bitcoin, pretty much right away, it started running up to me looking like it was going to infinity. And I was thinking in my head, not really knowing markets, not really being a seasoned investor, that's where we were headed because it was rational. And so as the price started going up, I kept learning more and more about Bitcoin and started clicking more and realized that I need as much of this as possible. And in my head, and everyone's saying it's going up forever, with not saying the caveat of with bear markets in between, with dips in between, whatever. So I'm thinking this is the most amazing thing to exist. This is the only thing I want to buy, and I need as much of it as possible. But I already put all my money in. So how do I get more? And took out a personal loan from a family member, what happened to be the 69K top. I got it like a week before that. So I was feeling good for about a week. And then it was a year of straight down.
This episode of the Bitcoin Economy is brought to you in part by Ledin.
Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledin is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over 9 billion loans since 2018. And they were the first to offer proof of reserves.
With Ledin, you get custody loans, no credit checks, no monthly payments, and more. Visit ledn.io for more information.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Economy. We have Ben Justman, the owner of Peony Lane Wine, the Bitcoin Wine, and also at Ben Justman on Twitter. Big Bitcoiner, excited to have you on the show. There's a ton of stuff we want to talk about with your story. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me. Excited to get into it.
Yeah. So we reached out because we saw your video, 6 minutes. I thought it was super authentic as well as opening up on your experience with Bitcoin early on. 2021, you buy in near the top. You're taking out personal loans. It the later down trickle effects of, oh no, there could be a bear market ahead and wading through some tough periods as well as a lot of other life events you had going on. I honestly think that we need more content like that instead of everything be a bull post that have a reality check, a gut check. Really happy you jumped on and willing to talk to us a little bit more about it because I don't think personal finance side, something we're focused on is having good, I think, mature information, having sober information. Number will go up for Bitcoin, but it's not going to be a straight line.
Totally. So I think that what I was caught up in was something that a lot of Bitcoiners get caught up in is you figure out what Bitcoin is, and you realize that the rational value for Bitcoin is infinite dollars. And what you don't learn right away is how markets work, how the Bitcoin markets work, and where the price is going to go because humans aren't rational. And so
Mhm.
when I got into Bitcoin, pretty much right away, it started running up to me looking like it was going to infinity. And I was thinking in my head, not really knowing markets, not really being a seasoned investor, that's where we were headed because it was rational. And so as the price started going up, I kept learning more and more about Bitcoin and started clicking more and realized that I need as much of this as possible. And in my head, and everyone's saying it's going up forever, with not saying the caveat of with bear markets in between, with dips in between, whatever. So I'm thinking this is the most amazing thing to exist. This is the only thing I want to buy, and I need as much of it as possible. But I already put all my money in. So how do I get more? And took out a personal loan from a family member, what happened to be the 69K top. I got it like a week before that. So I was feeling good for about a week. And then it was a year of straight down. And I think there's a lot of talk these days about taking loans on your Bitcoin, never having to sell. And that's great in theory, but you never know what's going to happen. And the downsides of bad timing are horrible. Even short term bad timing, losing sleep, and it working out in the end can be pretty rough.
Yeah. And that's a piece where, a lot of us haven't been really trading or investing with large amounts of capital up to this point. There's not many people that have gone all in on something before going all in on Bitcoin. And then realizing there's a roller coaster ahead. I think hearing that story, it's super tough because there's other things in your life, starting a business, or say you have kids going to college or need to pay for a wedding. And those things could happen during a bear market. So you need to be prepared for that and then adjust maybe how you acquire Bitcoin, what methods you get liquidity. What was some of the big reasons you kept the faith and didn't sell during that downturn?
I knew what Bitcoin was at that point, and I think that what I realized was my big mistake wasn't Bitcoin, it was that I didn't know what I was doing as an investor as far as timing goes, and the right asset at the wrong time, which in 10 years will be the right time. But when we're talking about these short-term windows of when you actually feel the pain, when you are at risk of like liquidation, whether your loan is tied to your Bitcoin or not, it's that short-term window that matters. I didn't sell because I think by the time that I realized like how wrong my timing was, I was already so deep into it and so realized how wrong I was that I didn't want to take a loss. I didn't want to have less Bitcoin than I did the day before. And selling the bottom would just compound that mistake. So I figured the best thing to do would be to ride it out. I planned the loan into payments that I could afford and stretched it out to a number that made sense for me and who I got the loan from. And so I was able to survive, but definitely like at 16K, I put the last of my dollars in, which is, I think any fiat person would have said, that's irresponsible. You can't keep putting money in at this point. But I put the last of my dollars in. It just happened to be the bottom of the bear. And I haven't bought Bitcoin since. My business sells wine for Bitcoin. And so I've accumulated over time. But in that experience, it was definitely you have the right asset. Time is extremely important because it is volatile. And I knew that, but you don't really understand the pain of what a year or 2 months of downward has to be when you need that money. And so looking forward, I run a business that has large capital requirements very seasonally. So every September, I buy a bunch of grapes. I have some other machinery things to buy. And I know I'm going to be selling going for, I know I need to sell Bitcoin to acquire grapes to keep my business going.
Yeah.
And so how I've experienced like this volatility, even in the bull run, is starting at the bear market. I learned about 4-year cycles the hard way and started looking forward to 2025 is probably my window where I'm going to need to sell. I need to acquire as much as possible before then and survive. And in 2025, the goal is to have a lot more capital measured in dollars and get out of my loans and be able to afford to continue the business. And now I'm in this position, like I said, where I need to sell Bitcoin to buy grapes to continue the business. Also want to get out of debt. But we pumped to $100,000 last winter. Great. But then I'm expecting us to keep going. And so I have to sell grapes in about nine, I have to sell Bitcoin in about 9 months to buy grapes. And we dropped down to 75. And I'm thinking like, at that time, wow, I'm really betting a lot on us being higher in 6 months. So that got pretty scary, a 30% drop, even though like over the average, I'm up, but I could have been selling at 100,000 if I needed to. Now we're bound down at 75. It better go back up. And so it has, but it really enlightened me again to when you need to sell, you're going to have to sell. And it sucks to have that moment in time or just a random 2 month blip of it being down locally that you have to sell. So it's not fun to be a forced seller. And I think that's another thing that goes into taking a loan to buy more Bitcoin is there are ways to, you could take out a loan and be able to finance it with your income. But a lot of people take out loans expecting to sell Bitcoin to be able to pay that loan off. And that adds even more complication. And especially if you don't have a long track record of getting timing right and you're just YOLOing in, it does get scary.
Yeah. For your experience too, shifting to a business owner that is holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, is accepting Bitcoin as payment. How hard has it been to not sell Bitcoin, personal Bitcoin as an investment, but then now as a business owner, it's working capital that you're using to buy assets to be able to produce wine, buying grapes and equipment and paying staff. And it seems like it's a challenge shifting that mindset to say, hey, like you really need to think of this not as a store of value as much, but the use case that's applying here is actual a medium of exchange and money and paying someone their salary. So how you time those sales or those exchanges into fiat to pay someone has to be a challenge. Like what's that been like?
So it's been easy for me to have things set aside and I just don't touch my Bitcoin. That's a pretty easy, stark rule that it's easy to stay at zero instead of going to 0 to 1. And the whole thing that got me into both financial greatness as far as like buying Bitcoin and into the future, but also like short term financial stress is being bad at timing markets. So I've had to stare at something that I am not great at and figure out ways to get better, narrow my risk window and go against kind of my emotions because my emotions of oh my god bitcoin's going up have gotten me into trouble in the past and now it's oh my god bitcoin's going up I have to sell, which does not compute for me because the rules that I've stuck to for the entire 4 or 5 years I've been in Bitcoin is you never sell your Bitcoin. But having debt is extremely stressful. And I've come to the personal decision that I'd like to get out of debt this bull. And I do not want to ever experience an 80% drawdown with debt, like debt that I don't want to be holding. Personal financial goals in there. And then also with that, I made the decision that I was taking out more debt over the last 3 years continually to not have to sell my Bitcoin because I knew what was coming. And it's the hard part is honestly, I don't think we've gotten to a point where what was coming is here. Like we're much higher, but more is coming, obviously. And especially if you zoom out, if you look 10 years down the road, you're like, why would I sell Bitcoin right now? But it's extremely stressful to carry debt. And I'm tired of it and don't want to keep taking out debt to fund the business in order to not have to sell Bitcoin because that 80% drawdown that I just have to expect is coming. I have to assume it's coming and I don't want to be in it. So it's going against all my instincts that it's a Bitcoiner, but it's really just like I've delayed gratification enough, I would say. Now it's about not having pain and the survivability is not about levering up, it's about levering down at this point. So it's been a major shift for me, and I would say it's something I've been struggling with, and being open about it and not hiding my weaknesses is I think how I get better. I get better by learning in the open, and it's really easy to not be ashamed about these bad Bitcoin buys because I have Bitcoin and everyone else that like would say I'm an idiot doesn't have Bitcoin. So I know who the idiot is here and I'm good in the long term. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of stigma towards making bad financial decisions, but I think the only way to learn is to be open about it because what I've found is the more I talk about it, the more everyone else is like, dude, I did the same thing. Here's how I'm getting through it. And I've been able to learn from them.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you sharing that story because I think people don't learn looking at a few people that have enough disposable income or they're wealthy before they get into Bitcoin. And these are problems that they typically don't have. But I think it's very telling that you see strategy and Michael Saylor looking at their convertible bonds. They are spaced out. They are, have these different expirations where you're going to have certain bear markets that they expect to happen where they don't want them to all be due at the
Yeah.
same time during a bear market that could then lead to a lot of stress on their balance sheet.
And so looking back on where I was at and putting that mindset into where I'm at looking forward without my personal situation of trying to get out of debt. Let's say I was just figuring out Bitcoin this cycle and was now like trying to chase it, trying to get more Bitcoin. And it feels like it's escaping me. People are talking about 250K, 500K, a million. Like these numbers sound huge. And when you're first getting into Bitcoin, especially if you're not like not coming from money, like I'll never get to one. But as soon as you start chasing, Bitcoin starts going the other way. And so if you are looking to take out a loan, especially on any Bitcoin that you currently have, you really want to do it from a position of strength. You do not want to be chasing, trying to catch up with that because the downside, especially for a Bitcoin backed loan, is you lose all that Bitcoin. You lose probably twice as much as you were hoping to gain. There's high reward because we all know the dollar is going to zero, but the risk is so short term and you don't know exactly when that's coming and you have no control over it. And you're probably not going to realize it's gone the other way until you're in a position where you can't really do anything to stop it.
What do you feel like for people new to the space? Would you say if you could go back to 2021, would you say prioritize not taking the loan? Would you try to have some like dollar cost averaging technique that you stick to and maybe write down goals, sticky note and say, hey, do not buy, set it in River, set it whatever platform you use on like a weekly recurring buy and then just DCA.
So I would dollar cost average pretty consistently, and I was very detailed with my personal finances. And before I found Bitcoin, I was robo index investor, knew enough about picking stocks that it wasn't the full-time job I wanted, which is what I figured it would take. So going back to 2021, I was pretty diligently just DCAing and was very conservative with my personal finances prior to finding Bitcoin. Had robo investor, was just doing index funds, and there was a balanced portfolio otherwise. And I think in finding Bitcoin, in it going up, it's, oh, I don't have time to DCA. This DCA isn't going fast enough. I need to find all these pockets of Bitcoin. So it's worse than what I've said. I took out my not majorly big, but my Roth IRA at the first 2021 top and dumped it in, and then it dropped 50% the next week. And I knew enough about Bitcoin to buy the bottom as hard as I could, given that I just dropped everything I had in and kept DCAing all the way through. And then as it was hitting 69K, I got caught up in the fever again and thought it was going to 125 or whatever, not ever thinking about the 80% bear market, and went again. And then the whole way down, buying the whole way down. I took out 0% interest credit cards, just kept buying so hard, accumulating as hard as I could all the way through because I knew what Bitcoin was. And I know that I learned the hard way with most things in life. And I really touched the stove hard. And the way I think about it is I'm so thankful that happened before I had an increased purchasing power given from Bitcoin's growth, because
Mhm.
I know I would have to touch the stove at a certain point. I know that about myself, and I'm happy it happened early because I think I would lose a lot more purchasing power if I didn't learn my lesson the hard way right away.
Mhm. Yeah, with anything that like good investors, you almost have to blow up an account to understand. You don't want people to do that, but paper trade or something. But y- you have to learn the lesson the hard way because the animal instincts when the number goes up are too strong to realize. And I think now people looking at, oh hey, I'm going to pile all into a new treasury company that launched last week and promised to buy Bitcoin but hasn't actually bought it. That's not where you should be parking your capital. In your case, I think it's good to see, hey, like you're investing in the real thing, investing in Bitcoin itself. But even that takes a temperament that needs to be learned. I think humans naturally are comes from cavemen. If they see a food, they see a meal, they have to like take advantage of it then, or because it could be a month before they see anything else. But the bad thing is it gets our adrenaline going when we see dollars on the screen and the price is going up.
Totally. So the price of Bitcoin short term, as we've been saying, is extremely volatile. In the long run, as long as you bought Bitcoin for dollars, you're on the winning side of the trade. And so if you can just do that, hold it, it looks bad in the short term, but survive, you're going to win in the long run. Yeah. If you're buying something that's not Bitcoin and you're trying to outperform Bitcoin, that's so much more risk. So especially if you're like, there's different decisions for everyone. Everyone can make. Some people go further out on the risk curve, but I think it is very comforting to know that, look, even if I bought Bitcoin at quote unquote the wrong time in the short term, at least I have Bitcoin and it's going to work out in the long run. Because I always said, even when I took that loan at 60K, it was like, I think this loan is going to be a good deal in the long run. It would be a better deal if I waited another year to take it, but I know it's going to work out in the long run because I bought Bitcoin. And so if you put yourself in a position with a loan where you could have less Bitcoin, that's bad. And if you put yourself in a position where you're buying something other than Bitcoin, that's a lot more risk because you might not outperform Bitcoin, and that's your base rate. So as long as you survive and as long as you get more Bitcoin, you're going to win in the long run. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So for you, business forecasting for Peony Lane, what are you looking at for preparing for next fall? Are you saying, hey, end of 2025, I see 180K, maybe spring 2026, 250K, but then at that point, need to be conservative for any projections beyond that and make sure that we have enough like working capital to be able to pay for our like next harvest expenses. What are you forecasting right now?
Totally. So I have, won't say a dollar amount, but significant expenses coming in August through October. And so that's very soon. And I'm taking a little bit of extra risk by waiting for maybe a next leg up. If that starts to go wrong, I probably just got to bite the bullet. But I'm waiting for a next leg up to cover a few months, my big expenses, and then everything else I can put off or limp along if I need to sell a little bit just to continue. I'm expecting the bull market to continue. I haven't seen anything that makes me afraid of a major drawdown, but I do know that the world is volatile and anything can happen. I didn't I learned my lesson from 100 to 75 again, that even though the whole world seems bullish, there can be short-term blips that bring things down 30%. And so I expect to pay off the next 3 months in dollars, and then I'll have a lot more cushion. I'll have a lot less sleepless nights through my intense, busy winemaking season because I cannot add any more stress to that period of time. And then I'll come out of that and be able to reassess. Hopefully, we're higher. Hopefully, we have a lot more to go. And I'm definitely not in a position right this second where I am getting out of debt tomorrow or next week or anything, but I'm just watching things as they go, paying attention, and I'm hoping that I've been in long enough to see top signals in myself because I've learned that I am the top signal. Whenever I think I'm the most bullish, it's the top.
Yeah, you have great self awareness. Your willingness to learn gets a lot of points for you. One thing that this good product idea is a forum for people that have seasonal businesses that are accepting Bitcoin and talking through, hey, here's where I think about the process, and here's where I'm thinking about converting this into dollars because payroll or some other cash based expense has to happen. We'll have to think about that, see if we can add in a forum on our site, allow for seasonal businesses to talk about like living on a Bitcoin standard. But Ben, it's been awesome having you. Really appreciate you taking the time. What's the best way to follow you, follow Peony Wine? What do you got down the sleeve?
Twitter and Noster, just search for me at Ben Justman. And then website is peonylanewine.com, Peony. And I ship all over the US and just released a estate Pinot Noir that I'm really excited about. Probably my best wine that I've ever made from my vineyard here in Colorado, the highest elevation Pinot in North America. So fun for people to try that and just reach out if you have any questions about the wine or my experience with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We'll have to give some a shot, send out some bottles, especially to some listeners. That might be a nice little gift that we can give to some of our listeners for like a trivia question would be Peony Lane Wine. So Ben, appreciate you. Have you back on and then good luck with the harvest coming up.
Thank you, sir.